This episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast is brought to you by MEGA, your medical indemnity partner. Whether you're starting out in your career or have decades of experience, MEGA helps you thrive with support that goes beyond insurance. Enjoy travel benefits like complimentary travel insurance and Qantas points on your membership, plus education, medico-legal support, access to career coaching and wellbeing resources. Visit mega.com.au to learn more. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.
Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Welcome back to another episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast. Today, I am delighted to welcome onto the podcast Tracey Ezard, who I was so lucky to meet in the recent Women in Leadership course in the delights of Prato, Italy. Welcome, Tracey.
So lovely to be here, Joe, and to see your face. How good was that time in Prato? I think privileging that time for ourselves and learning and connecting is just so extraordinary. So it's really nice to catch up with you again.
Thank you, Tracey. Yeah, great to have you here. I first met Tracey at the introductory dinner on the Sunday night when the backdrop was the city walls of Prato. I mean, the setting was just incredible. We all got to meet each other, including all the facilitators. I really gelled with Tracey's sort of dynamic bundle of energy with impact and insight through everything that she delivers. We were lucky enough to have you delivering your expertise and guiding our first day and a half of our course. Please look up Tracey. She's an amazing speaker, author, educator, and facilitator. And she really lives the concept of ferocious warmth, which she has created in any room she walks into. So, Tracey, it's my absolute honor and delight to have you here on the podcast today.
Thanks, Joe. And just, when I interact with people like you, and there is, that personification of the ferocious warmth, sort of concept, which is being absolutely ferocious about the passion with which you do things and the purpose and the outcomes for people and really caring about people and doing it with a warmth that actually compels people to you rather than repelling. That's ferocious is certainly not about fearsome. It is about absolutely having a deep belief in making an impact and having purpose in the world. So, and, this podcast is a great example of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so good. So there are quite a few visuals that go with ferocious warmth. Obviously, today's going to be more audio for people, but there might be some online resources so they can see that beautiful infinity symbol and so forth to get that real visual about that. But before we get to that, you've got an amazing story that I read about in Ferocious Warmth. Go for your brief podcast version, please, Tracey, on sort of who you are and how you have come to create Ferocious Warmth.
I have worked across a number of sectors, and education being one, hospitality being one, the automotive industry being one, and about 20 years ago, I actually started my practice and started really learning about what were the patterns I had always seen in great teams, in great leaders. And I started really learning about emotional intelligence. What is it that helps the mind and the body get into sync, really? So have always really been interested in that. So I did a lot of accreditation and started my business 20 years ago. So, and at the time, I sort of started doing, because I had been a leader for quite a number of years. So I started doing leadership workshops because, of course, my training was as an educator as well. So designing workshops. And I started doing quite a lot of work in a hospital network and at the same time a lot in community health here in Victoria because I'm based in Victoria. And so I started really working with clinicians a lot in that time. And really, back then there was nothing around leading teams. How do you lead yourself? In fact, still it's pretty thin on the ground. And so health became one of my major sort of sectors to work with. And like education, I work with a lot of school leaders, like principals all around the world now around my cultural work and the leadership work. but health clinicians are very similar. They're very similar people. They've got this incredible passion for what they do, care, concern for society and looking after society. But sometimes not necessarily the focus on the skills on managing people and leading people. So I've always done that work. And so Ferocious Warmth really popped out of, I'm a pattern detector, and just watching patterns of excellence and talking to people about what leadership helps you turn up to work and flourish and be able to be the best you can be, think the best you can, but also connect and feel like you belong. So that whole space of psychological safety, of high challenge, high support. And so that's where both Ferocious Warmth and the Buzz, which is my professional culture framework, where they came from was actually watching excellence and then unpacking it through talking to people, diagnostics, all that sort of thing, and then looking what the evidence coming through around what great leadership is was presenting. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great. And so you've connected with the team at Monash. I'm not sure what your connection is there with Prof. Helena T.
Yes, so Monash Health was one of the places that I have always done a lot of work. And so I met Helena when a Women in Leadership program was started at Monash with her and Dr. Anjali Dulia. And so I started working with a lot of the medical team. So before that, I'd done, leadership programs, but, it was nurses, it was allied health. I did a lot of work with them, but actually doctors would not turn up.
Yeah, right.
Which I think let me take that back. Over a decade that I did that course with them, I think we had 2 doctors come. They were both males, and they totally got the need to build their leadership. And I was always really, it was a real disappointment, I think, that the medical team didn't feel like that was something that they either could access or should access, or it's not attached to, one of our colleges, whatever it might have been. So that was a disappointment. So this program was started with those 2 amazing women really wanting it to come over from the general leadership area into more specifically for women in medicine. And so that's where it started. And so that's when Helena and I really started going, let's create this into something more. And it is the program that it is now with the Monash Centre for Health and Research Implementation, so MICRI, and Monash University. And it sits as part of the really large project now that's Australia-wide of advancing women in healthcare leadership. That's a huge systemic project that the involvement I have is this program. So, and this program was really the seed, and it really comes from that space of let's stop telling women that they have to be better at what they do, but actually shift the system that is really minimising their ability to have the impact that they absolutely can. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah. And I really sense that collectively we grew, we onboarded, we tested out, we're in a space where it was safe to play.
Absolutely. And that's such an important part. It's a critical part for me as an educator that when we go in to do this sort of learning, lecture style, so archaic. And yet I know that for a lot of people listening, that's probably how you've had to move your way through. But when it comes to leadership, or not just leadership, but thinking about ourselves, thinking about how we're growing our professional growth, our personal growth, it's really a whole body sport, and you have to be able to feel it. This is Ferocious Warmth, head and heart. You have to be able to cognitively understand it. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with over the years, though, that they academically know the stuff. They can probably spout theories at you, but then the team will look at you and go, but they don't do it. They can talk it, but they don't do it. And I get really, I get really sad for people when I think there are people that just don't have that self-awareness to realise that knowing something does not necessarily translate into doing something until we keep that intentionality around it.
Sure. So why don't we expand on the beautiful 2 R's that you often talk about in your book? That is the results approach and the relationship approach. Yeah. And or not necessarily approach, but that you need both of them to really either grow your team or to lead well. And as you were maybe hinting at before, we can be so great on results, but unless we have the relationship skills to bring in there, we could get even better results if we have both of them. But don't let me be talking about your content. Please go for
I love it. I love it because you've absolutely got it. You know, we can have technical brilliance. We can be the sharpest tool in the shed. We can cognitively talk our way out of anything. But if we cannot connect with people and actually see what motivates people and help to create an environment where people can step in and thrive and think well, then we are missing a whole heap of what actually is required to lead people. And I think anyone who has doctor at the start of their title has a leadership role. People look to it. It's part of the hierarchy that is set up in healthcare. And so we've got a responsibility, I think, for understanding our impact. So Ferocious Warmth really is about, let's not see that excellence in results means that we have to just be mediocre with relationships. Actually, why can't we have both? And in fact, when we have both, we get better outcomes. We get better thinking. And, you know, for many of the people listening, they will be far more all over this than I am. But, you know, the neuro leadership that we're finding out of the neuroscience now, and the being able to connect the prefrontal cortex and how much oxytocin matters, how much serotonin matters, how much people want to work with each other matters and impacts on our ability to collaborate, to listen to each other and to problem solve. So if we come to work and we don't have that relationship stuff working, then we're not able to bring our best thinking anyway. So it is about that blend of the integration of the head and the heart, not one or the other, but what does the context in front of me need, and how am I self-aware enough to know what I need to bring in for this moment?
Yeah. Fantastic. No, that's great. Well, that might lead us on to another one of your concepts that you share in your book, Drop One Little Letter.
Yeah. And
it is so helpful in this, couple of paragraphs. It's not super long, but inviting, if it's okay for me to share, inviting the reader to think about bringing this in as a leader to their team that they're working with. Maybe rather than saying, I'd like to challenge your thinking, I'd like to challenge our thinking. So the Y is the one letter being dropped there. Yeah. You know, share with us either, you know, when you've taught that or used that or seen the impact of that, maybe, please, Tracey.
Yeah, sure. This stems out of one of the most important things, I think, around really strong teams is that the quality of the conversation shows the quality of the culture. And, you know, I learned that from one of my mentors, Judith E. Glaser, who originated the concept of conversational intelligence. And it's very backed by the neuroscience of building trust in conversations. And part of my team concepts has got authentic dialogue as being one of the core pieces. The other one is our collective growth mindset. And the third one is, do we create a compelling environment? But the ability for teams to be able to go deep into what they think, what they agree with, what they're looking at, what's the best way forward, what's the good decision making that needs to happen, maybe around this patient. If it's only one person driving the train around that, and people either feel like they can't speak or they don't get invited to speak, then, you know, we're not making the best on balance decisions at all. So I think one of the skills we always want to build is our ability to bring out good conversation in our teams where people are tapping into their thinking, but we are also tapping into our thinking. So I think as human beings, we get really good at going, well, I'm right, and I'm going to challenge you around that. I don't think that you've come up with the right idea here. Whereas if we can actually bring in that humility to say, first off, am I willing to challenge my own thinking first, right? That's always the first step. And I think when we raise that question, goes, look, I'd really love to challenge our thinking here. I'm wondering if we're seeing this too quickly, this answer.
Yeah.
It can be something like that, or it could be, you know, and, you know, it came to me once when I was working with a whole group of people, and I had a colleague of mine was facilitating with me, and she's one of these really great, curious people, and it was really early on when I started doing this work. And she sat there and she just heard some people talking, and she went, I wonder if I could just challenge our thinking about the way we might be approaching that. And it just really hit me. It was one of those aha moments that I went, what an elegant way that she's got reframing happening on that. And then I started thinking about what I saw in teams when there was a little bit of adversarial rather than partnership.
Mm.
And when there's adversarial, what happens is, we get our defenses up, cortisol goes up a bit, we start sort of reacting, getting maybe triggered in a little way that means that we're not thinking as best. Whereas if we can all be curious together, even that question is useful. What are we curious about with what we've got in front of us? Mm. I will often ask people, because I think these are skills. So I've been, I work with teams sometimes around how do we build these skills of talking better to each other?
Yeah.
Or not even talking better. How do we have healthy dialogue? How do we have healthy challenge? And so one of them can be, sometimes when I work with a team, I will say to them, okay, the first thing I want you to do is we'll do a few other connecting things around them, but I'll say, what's a curious question you've got for the rest of the team?
Yeah.
Now, I think it's a really good team question to ask. In some leadership teams that I work with, that's actually like their ritual. They know they're coming with, this is what I'm curious about here, or maybe something on the agenda. What you do is you just get people to pause for a moment and you just go, look, so we've laid out the facts. What's a curious question you've got around this? Yeah. So there are a couple. So I'd love to challenge our thinking, or to even have more humility and more openness to learning first up and go, look, I've been thinking about this and I've actually been trying to challenge my own thinking about this. When we model being a learner, when we model being open to being wrong, and there's that ferocious warmth is all about holding that fine line of knowing when is your really strong opinion required here. This is the next step we really need to take, and we're really advocating for it. And when is it that you need to step into, this is a really complex thing. So we need to have our best thinking around the table. So I want everyone to bring their thoughts.
Yeah. Yes.
You need to be able to, that's why the infinity symbol is the symbol of ferocious warmth, because you need to be able to move and adapt and be flexible as to what's required in front of you.
Yeah. I'm just really thinking, in a clinical scenario or in a ward setting where everything is pretty routine and you have your ward rounds, and I'm in rehab, so we definitely have case conferences every week, very multidisciplinary, got the whole team around the room for maybe an hour and a half. I would see that as our opportunity to start just starting with one question.
Absolutely. Just one. And I'd really love to ask you, because you've obviously been in many hundreds of them in your career, and also anyone listening, have a think about what are the patterns in a multidisciplinary case conference that's going on, a case meeting, a case review, whatever it is you want to, you're in. What are the elements of the things that are in the ones that really work, and where people have voice, contribution, the right information's brought out, the differing of opinion is explored rather than shut down? What is it that's in place there? And I've just given you quite a few of them that are there compared to ones that aren't. But from a personal position, what would you say going on, especially for the leaders in the group?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I can reflect on a recent locum that I did where now the consult liaison psychiatry team, who are sort of increasingly involved, especially with some of the patients on the ward, they come in because their input is so important in the overall direction and care of that patient. Yeah. But there was something about having this like quite a young consultant, so quite young and dynamic and thinking outside the box, and the registrar as well. I just felt we had a bit more space to expand on things with this other medical team there, with my whole allied health team. And it was a deeper discussion. I mean, it was a challenging case we were talking about. It wasn't really opening with those questions that I have since learnt, because I did that locum before I came to Italy and that, but I could already tell that there was more depth, more space, more time for us to talk about this.
And if I could do something, which is a strategy we talked about over in Prato, of double click, if I can double click, so that, on what you just said, to say, if you think back to the way those doctors were, what was the quality of their interaction with the allied health or the nursing staff or that were there that allowed that to happen? How would you unpack that? What would you say that you saw?
Oh, look, the body language was quite relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't sitting forwards on the table like this with the elbows on the table. It was actually more sitting back, actually in a more pondering kind of body language, which we wouldn't always have. But hey, that might make a difference.
Absolutely, because pondering is about curiosity. Pondering is about reflection. And so with that, there is people unconsciously see, okay, there is space. I love the way that you use space. There is space there for us to actually put in, the hand therapist sitting at the table. Well, when I was working with them the other day and their sister was next to them, she was saying blah, blah, blah. Now, how often would there maybe be a case where that space is not there, but there's some really vital information that the hand therapist has got?
Yes. That
they maybe in another scenario didn't feel confident enough to add, or just didn't, there was space wasn't there, or maybe it was psychologically unsafe because of what the other person might have been, the stronger, the more influential person at the table might have been putting out. So we should never underestimate our impact on people when we're sitting in a group as to whether we can shut down or make that happen. So really great insight that you see. So, and this is something that I've just always been fascinated about. I bet that, the senior people in the room asked questions of the people with a perceived lower status, in the hierarchy.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. And so, and again, this is really well researched. Professor Amy Edmondson and Dr. Ingrid Newbarb, they did some really interesting research on leader inclusiveness in healthcare. And certainly when those of perceived higher status asked for input from others, then there was a shift in psychological safety. People felt invited. So sometimes we actually, we need to invite, and it, and sometimes it needs to be more than what. So what do you think? Right?
Yes,
but,
absolutely.
More like, so Jo, I know you've spent some really condensed time with this patient. What are some things that you think we need to know? When you ask that sort of question, you as the professional goes, absolutely, I've got stuff I want to add. That's it. Yeah.
Because it flips the rote nature of some of these meetings.
Yes.
For example, in multidisciplinary team, we're like, give us a physio update, or not give us, but let's have a physio update. What's your occupational therapy update, speech, etc. It goes around that way. Yeah. But there was something more metacognitive about what we were asking about. And it was exactly examples like that when I'd seen this patient with a family member, XYZ interaction happened, and this kind of concept really lit them up. And we were then all thinking on a different level.
Love it.
To try and get that rehab engagement that we absolutely needed with this patient to progress them along their way towards exiting the hospital.
Absolutely. Beautiful. I love it. And I'm going to make a big assumption, but I reckon it's a pretty close assumption, that those doctors would have come in absolutely with the mindset of, well, we don't know the next steps. We don't know what the right next steps are. Mm-hmm. And we will create the right next steps with this group. Whereas how many people actually feel that they have people, senior people can come in and go, I know the right next steps, and that is the outcome all the way along. And what's set up is just a compliance click. Yeah, let's hear from the physios, let's hear from the OTs, let's hear from the social worker. Mm-hmm. All those things just get said, but nothing really, the dots don't get put together. Yeah. It's synthesis, which is really interesting because a lot of those people are really very clever people, but they're not synthesizing perhaps, and this is perhaps an assumption I can make around that, but I've been told by enough people that actually there's a really lost opportunity in MD teams, when they come together, if there are leaders in the group that go, I am right, and I don't care what you say,
yes,
I am right. So it's a beautiful thing to let go of. It goes with the challenge our thinking, which says, drop the need to be right.
That's it. Yeah. So good. So good. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. So let's also expand on a few other wonderful areas that I read about in your book. I was really curious about either your mentor or somebody you'd worked with, Pete Langstraat from British Columbia, who was really focused on growing the people around him. And the quote that you shared from him was such a visual quote. You can imagine this guy with a team of 25 around him, and he referenced something around, if everybody's sitting down looking at your feet, then we might as well all go home, because this is not the kind of room I want to be in a part of. He said you really need to model it for it to work. And that's growing the people around you, and I guess growing yourself as well, that people have professional responsibility for their personal growth. What else have you got to add around that? Thanks, Tracey.
Well, so much. I met Pete. We were both speaking at a conference in Sydney, an education conference, and he was head of a very, very big district in Canada, in British Columbia. And I always say, I can spot a ferocious warmth leader from miles away and via email and in person. And I knew straight away he would have been an absolutely brilliant ferocious warmth leader. So we made contact. I interviewed him. The impacts that he and that whole region made on the Indigenous people of that area was extraordinary. So it wasn't just that he was a good guy. Ferocious warmth is about, I'm a good person, I connect and I have good relationships, but we get great results as well. And so he's a man after my own heart, because the cultural work that I really push and I really believe in is the best teams are learning teams, and they have to be full of people who are willing to be learners by themselves and together. So I think a good, if I can put it back to the multidisciplinary team, you want people to walk away from that all feeling like they've learnt something.
Yes.
Or it's expanded them of some way, And so one of the elements of ferocious warmth is being expansive, and it is all about leading the learning. And so Pete's example there was in the expansive section of the book, because the learning culture that we create has got to be about, am I willing to grow as a person? So I know that for most doctors, you're always learning, you're always doing your, CPD, all that sort of stuff. It's really, but it's technical and it's your craft. How often do we actually spend time putting into actually growing ourselves as leaders, as people who turn up with a responsibility to get collective results rather than individual results?
Yes.
It's a different mindset. So, growth mindset, a terminology that Professor Carol Dweck, made famous years ago, but it's been, she identified something around people who persevere, they don't give up. We can go into fixed and growth mindset all the time, but growth mindset is something we would hopefully pride ourselves on. Oh, okay, we stuffed up there. What would we do differently?
Yeah.
Interestingly, I find there are a lot of leaders that never think about their leadership like that. But I think the challenge in teams is creating a collective growth mindset where we're all willing to grow. Yeah. And so that was what Pete was saying to that group of people. You're my senior leaders and you're expecting me to do all the heavy lifting about what we're trying to achieve. I need you, if you're going to be in this room, you've got to be prepared to challenge yourself. Let's challenge each other. Let's be provocative about what we're trying to achieve. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Yeah. And you can do that. The other part that sometimes misses is that sometimes people do that with no emotional intelligence. And it can inflict trauma on people because it's done with no thought about people, their delivery, the way it's said. We might be dysregulated ourselves because we're not getting the results. So, your view of the world around if we're not looking after ourselves means that people get that in extremities rather than being able to be regulated and go, this is the work to do. Yes. But actually, this is the quality relationships and respect, professional conversations we want to have.
Yes. Yeah.
And we care about each other.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, it's great. I've got one more reference to your book before we maybe just talk a little bit about burnout as well, because that's what this podcast is also about. So you really touched on, leaders must, or a quote you had was, leaders must learn and lead in equal measures. That was coming from Professor Michael Fullan from Collaborative Cultures. And you've referenced how much we have to learn per year, but really ticking off a box about your leadership is, I don't even want it to be a tick box, Tracey, more like that curiosity thing. How can I expand my leadership? I don't know that we're even quite in that mindset through our training programs, whether that's the med school level, specialty level, or then continuing to do our annual training as needed. And this concept, which I've never heard of leadership being our second profession for education and healthcare professionals. Yeah. Really, how much time do we consciously invest in this part of our profession? This is rich.
Absolutely. And that second quote I love. It's from Linda Hutchinson. She's over in New Zealand and works a lot in doing similar things to what I do. She's, I'm not too sure whether she's still doing it. She may have retired, but just a very wise woman. And it was just really landed and around it being, your second profession, yet how much time do you give to it? And when I say that, with attribution to Linda in rooms, people always just go, so true. And when we do the leadership programs that we do with the Women in Leadership program, when we do the introductions, it never fails to, make me go, hopefully we're shifting this when people introduce and they go, look, I've been a leader for X amount of time, but I've never had the access to leadership. And, so it's huge and it's everywhere. And I do think we can do it. Like, I think we have a personal responsibility to go, what is it that I am doing in my life and how am I making sure that I'm growing around it? So people who listen to podcasts, your listeners here, they're expansive. They're showing that expansive section of, I want to grow and I want to think about what I do and I want to reflect. And, to go to a leadership course, research would show that very carefully, unfortunately, in a lot of professional development, things drop off really quickly. And so my job is to try to make it as sticky as possible that it can be kept on and touch back in with people and give people thinking and all that sort of stuff. But I'm working with a team at the moment where they've got some serious culture issues, and I've worked with the leaders a couple of times, and I need to work with them. I'm working with them again. But some of the team have said, I haven't seen any shift at all. And, that's really disheartening. And it would be a couple of people. And, as well as I do, that there are some people that are uncoachable.
Yes.
And even with the backup, they've got that very inward, this is what everyone else has to do, but not me. But unfortunately, they're really impacting on the culture of that whole place being able to move forward, because that's keeping that discontent in their teams, even when the other teams are actually really trying to do the work. So, I often will say to people, okay, if your team was in the room with me right now and you weren't, what would they be saying about you? What would they be saying you bring into the environment? What would they say were your strengths? That's really so important. And we do a lot of strength work with the Ferocious Warmth. What's your head strengths? What's your heart strengths? Where do you want to build more, more strength? Where's a skill you really need to develop into? Because, some of us are more heart driven and we're still building that boundaries, the strategic thinking, the objectivity around this conversation. Some of us are very head driven. We're still building the empathy and the compassion. And, so we're always a work in progress. We are self-aware and doing the work.
Yeah. So true. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing all of that. Tracey, what I could imagine some of my audience saying is like, Jo, I got enough on my plate anyway. Don't ask me to do another thing. Like people are struggling with burnout. You see it in education, you see it in healthcare as well. Why am I inviting an amazing leadership educator onto the podcast and we're now talking about two streams of learning and leading as well. And they're like, I just haven't got the energy to take any more of this on. leaders get burnout as well. And one question could be, what awareness can they have to catch the signs early? What might you talk about with people there? And then we might go into a second part of, energy management, I think, is a really big part of burnout recovery and burnout prevention as well. But let's just start with the awareness part first, please.
Yeah. So in terms of awareness, we do know that we think we're self-aware, but we're actually not self-aware. So I think some of the first indicators have to be through stopping and reflecting on, am I happy? Am I able to make time to just even sit and do something for me? When it comes to leadership, if we have a think about how much energy we actually put out to people's stuff, it's a huge amount, right? Yeah. Be probably 80% people, 20% actually doing the job, right? Yeah. So it's false economy to actually say, I haven't got time to think about my leadership, because sometimes it's the fact that we're not thinking about our leadership that is leading us down to have to deal with so many people things, because we're not paying attention to our team. We're not paying attention to the culture we're creating. And so we sort of get into this chasing our tail. And, sometimes we can, I'm sure you talk all the time around cynicism is something that comes up when people are burnt out. As soon as we start not being able to see any joy in our work, or it's been a while type of thing, that's a really good one to go, I've just got to do some reset, And again, in this course, the amount of ahas when we do that, Ferocious Warmth is about being able to bring the integrate head and heart. But if not, we're going to be in our default. So that would be, if we know we're very heart driven and we're finding it hard to get to that cognitive reasoning stuff, that's a really good first indicator. If we're really in our head and we're just really off with everyone, and we can't see anyone else's perspective, and why won't they just do what they are told to do? That's a good alarm bell right there.
Yes. Sure. Yeah. No, really good. For sure. Relatable, and great to see it from the different angles there that relate to Ferocious Warmth so well. So I guess the other part around not one more thing, and I often sort of say working with clinicians to thrive by doing less. So some of my tagline is not to add any more to people's lives or things to do. What's my question around here? It would be something around how can they sort of really embrace their leadership role that basically goes with the territory or goes with the job title without feeling like it's a whole nother Everest to scale after they've already scaled the Everest of doing their specialty training?
Yeah. What a beautiful question. I think leadership is something that you do want to do. And again, in my experience across, almost 20 years working with healthcare leaders, I do get surprised by how many people get, I was tapped on the shoulder for it now. So, and I know leadership in healthcare, as it is in education, it's a tough job. It's one of the most complex jobs. And it is interesting because after we have conversations around stuff, we actually find people are really enjoying actually doing the leadership. And I always say to people, if you are a Ferocious Warmth leader, we need you more than ever. We need people who are absolutely can transform, help improvement, build really great outcomes for patients, for clients, whoever they might be, because we are really creating the best cultural environment to do the best work. So we want to be able to absolutely do that and to do it with a bit of inspiration around actually there's joy in the work.
Yeah.
There is joy in the work and how do we focus quite a lot on that? Because, from our brain's perspective and our heart's perspective, if we're always focusing on the negative of the work, then that's what people are going to pick up from us, but that's also what we're going to focus on. And I absolutely believe we need support networks. You need to have your squad. And so at the moment, you and I are on this podcast, and I'm on a retreat that I have with 3 other girlfriends, and we do this once a year. We put in our diaries. We make it work in really, really busy environments. And when my kids were little, we still did it. We just made it work because we know that that's one of the things that we won't let go of, because that helps us bring our inspiration, our spark back, our energy, and we leave so energized about new thinking, ways of looking at the world, and fueling ourselves, and not seeing that it's selfish to do that, but seeing, my mantra around wellbeing is leadership wellbeing is a leadership behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. And don't put it to the side and go, oh, that's the class that I really wanted to get to. It's not about that. And I think it's one of your previous guests on the same, thinking that I am. It's in the small moments that you actually fill that cup up. Yeah. And because we tend to put off the big moments. Yeah. So how do we stop and really enjoy the fact that, something really great just happened on that shift today, and how do we help our team see them as well, or something brilliant that happened at home, or all those sort of things. But we can set our brains into the only thing I'm looking for is all the stuff ups, all the things I'm not doing well enough, all the stuff that I need to tell myself I'm suck at. What about if we decided not to do that?
Yeah, for sure.
What would it be like?
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think I'd also just like to highlight for the listeners too, you certainly don't have to be titled to be a leader.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And that we've all done some kind of leadership wherever we are in our career as well, and sort of see how it doesn't maybe look like an expenditure of energy going forwards. And I think maybe my Everest analogy was a bit too much, because it doesn't have to be like that, right?
No.
And just see what we've already got, experience-wise, practice-wise, understanding-wise, and sort of see that resourcefulness that we have it within ourselves, rather than feeling like it's another CV we have to fill out and complete. So,
and it can be a really nice activity too, to just get a sheet of paper, do a timeline, a wheelie, you might like a straight line, I like wheelie timelines, and actually go back through your life and just sort of highlight, where is it? Oh, okay, that's right. I used to play the flute and actually used to lead I used to lead. We would have youngies come in, and, you might not have sat on the first desk playing the flute. You might have sat on the third desk, but you helped to lead people when they first came in, or led people because you had been in the orchestra for so much longer and you were seen as the leader of the connectors and, at McDonald's and all this sort of stuff. We have been, virtually all of us, I think, that are in caring professions and of health, education, social impact.
Yes.
Have been leaders in one way or another throughout their life. And the other thing I would just add to that is team, culture that gets both relationships and results right, are not just made by leaders. We're all architects of them. We all create them. We all bring things into them. And some of the most influential people don't hold a leadership title at all, but they're very influential. And some are influential for good and some are influential for evil.
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
No, good point.
It's a bit extreme, but, sometimes I find teams that are in extremities, and there are people that don't care what their impact is on anyone else. And unfortunately, everyone else suffers. So,
sure.
And then there's beautiful people that I'm sure are listening to your podcast that are going, actually, no, I do want to have an impact that's useful for people and effective and really helps people to thrive and for me to thrive as well. I think that's what we genuinely do want to do. Yes. Sometimes we just get our heads down and we actually forget to look.
Yeah, around us. Yeah, for sure. No, that's great. Thank you. One question that I always ask my guests is, what is one self-care practice you have that you rarely miss?
Well, this retreat would be one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But that's sort of like an annual one that we do,
Sure.
although we do catch-ups along the way. So good question. I reckon that for me, I would never let go of walking, right? So I love walking. I live in inner city Melbourne. I used to feel that, I should go out to the country and just walk out there, but I actually realised that I'm an urban hiker and I love it. I love going in the alleyways. I love going past the houses. I love walking the country too, but, so I will never give that up. But the other thing that goes with that walking is, for as long as I possibly can, I will always take the stairs and not the escalator.
Yeah, great. Love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And it might seem like a little thing, but it's, for me, it's almost like it's an indicator to me that I am paying attention to my long-term health.
Yeah.
Because I'm 60 now and I want to be able to keep on walking up those stairs when I'm 85.
Love it. Yeah.
That's my
Wonderful. Well, keep going to Italy. There'll be plenty of
absolutely.
I could say, Tracey.
I was going to say, then before Italy, I was in Lisbon for a conference, and oh my goodness, Lisbon and Porto have both got that's the place to stay healthy.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, look, please let my audience know how they can connect with you and what you offer to people worldwide. Thanks, Tracey.
No worries, Jo. So absolutely, LinkedIn would be great. Tracey Ezard. I think there's only one of me. And I also have a website. It has a lot of blogs attached to it. I have an online Ferocious Warmth module program that you can do. But I also do online courses. I do face-to-face courses. I do a Ferocious Warmth group mentoring course, which just has 8 leaders in it. Generally, I do a women one, but not always. And it's 2 hours across 4 months. And so that's a really great getting into the nitty-gritty. But I also do a lot of conference speaking all around the place as well, because, I think that our technical skills get us so far, but our technical and our relationship skills will get us a lot further.
Yeah, so true. So true. Look, Tracey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. I will be sure to put links so people can find you in the show notes for today's episode.
Right.
Wishing you all the best in your glorious retreat as I see the sun setting down there behind the gum trees or whatever's in the background there. It looks amazing. I really appreciate your time today and look forward to staying in touch.
You're welcome, Jo. So great to have that conversation with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ready to take the next step in your burnout recovery journey? Visit drjobraid.com for free resources, all 150 plus podcast episodes, and information about my keynote speaking. Links are in the show notes. Your well-being matters. Protect the asset that is you. Be your best you. Rely on MEGA for your protection and support, serving doctors for over 125 years through insurance, education, medical legal advice, and member benefits designed to help you thrive and succeed. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.